And our call-in number is 563-999-3581. And press 1, and that puts you into queue to talk to us. And we would love to hear your comments and questions because that makes this your show. And while I'm waiting on Michael to dial in, I'll just say I've worked on the website most of this morning. I've added a new page. The notes for all of this is going to be in the notes for today. The new 7-step current short form, it was the newest one, and then Michael had edited it based on the conversations over the last couple of days with Jack and going through the worksheet. So now both the current 7-step and the 7-step short can be directly accessed from just one click, and you can get them both as a JPEG or a PDF. And then from that page, you can also go to pick up all the other reality management wake-up sheets, because there's probably 20 different ones. But the short form on that's just whyagain.org/wake-up sheet. And that'll take you directly to where you can access the current 7-step and the 7-step short that we just edited yesterday. And like I said, you can get them both either as a JPEG, which is a picture, or as a PDF format and download them. There's also, Michael had written or edited, boy, I'm stuttering here. Okay, Michael had edited, it was called A Free Course in Holistic Self-Healing, Living as Love is Better. And so that edited version of that article is now on the website in 7 different sections. So I put it on there and then put links to the one page. You can find it under More, News, in Michael's Word, Michael Rice Courses, Forgiveness Tools, Healing Mind, Body, and Spirit, and then also in the notes for today. And there is a new section, a new menu item under Healing that's called Michael Rice Courses. And in the future, there will be a link to whyagain.org, Michael Rice Courses. Hopefully we'll get it set up to where online courses can be accessed from there for a fee, so that'll help maybe increase some income. But in the meantime, if you click on that, you can go to several things. You can get a description of the intensive courses that we do, like the Why Is This Happening to Me Again, Codependence to Interdependence, Healing Through Relationships, whatever. It lists all of the courses that we do or have done as workshops or whatever. And so you can pick that up. So if you go under Healing and Michael Rice Courses, you can pick up the course descriptions, you can pick up this article, Living as Love is Better, and you can also pick up the schedule where you'll be able to see what we're going to do live at Heartland this summer. And so all of that's accessible from that one place. And I'm not sure what else I did today. But anyway, there's some changes on the website, so go out, look around. If you find something's not working, please let me know what link so I can fix it. And at this time, I'm going to welcome Michael.
Awesome work. Your genius with computers is amazing, sweetheart. Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And beyond that, I appreciated the willingness of the gentleman that we worked with yesterday to really yield and let go of some old power person dynamics and to entertain a new way to approach conflict situations in his life. It's powerful to watch that willingness and that shift happening. And when you realize that if you hold a newborn child, you'll find a universal experience, and at the other end of that newborn child, that newborn little form, if you tap into the essence of the newborn, you find that what is there is active present love. Everybody's descriptor is the same. And it doesn't matter who came into the world. We all came in exactly the same way. And we came into a world that then literally brainwashed us to function out of something other than experiencing ourselves as present love and using that love to fuel every decision, every thought, to fuel our physiology, to fuel our speaking, and to fuel literally our presence in the world. And you know, the bottom line is we've been ripped off for the truth of who we are. And my take at this point is that there's one reason that there is conflict and suffering in the world, starvation, all of the crazy stuff that's going on, all of the abuse, the wars, is because once someone gets lost in that shift into hostility and fear, unless they've got the tools with which to remove the hostility and fear, they're stuck there. And out of that comes all the violence, all the conflict, all of it. And so one simple tool can rectify all of that. One simple tool, if used, will literally empower us to go into or uncover the empowerment that's already in us to touch into the truth of who we are and to function out of that presence of love. But if I'm frustrated, angry, annoyed, enraged, afraid, lonely, lost, whatever, seemingly upset about this not working that way and that not working this way and this not being the way I wanted, then I respond out of my wounds and blame others. And that circumstance I would offer is always an opportunity for me to heal the pain constructs of my own mind and body and nervous system. And sadly, if I hold unresolved trauma within, it's just too easy to put the underlying energies of that trauma into my brain's internally constructed perceptual images of others, pretending they're the cause. In this way, my mind's trauma or pain-based interpretation of events appears to me to be the truth, leads away from understanding what is really true. And we mistake interpretation for fact. And there's no healing until we can tell fact from interpretation, reality from actuality. You know, at every moment of our lives, there's what's actually going on in the world, and then there are the realities output by our minds, the constructs of our minds. We've suggested before, and if you haven't been part of those conversations, you know, put in the search bar on YouTube, Anil, A-N-I-L, Seth, S-E-T-H. And he explains precisely how perception is nothing but a construct of the mind. And if we make our perception, if we make literally the world generated by the brain, the world that we see, that we think we're looking at through our eyes, but that's a lie, if we make our perception about somebody else, then we lock ourselves into a mind that can only replicate the past. In that way, we get stuck in the why is this happening to me again mode. You say, well, I know a person who's just such a genius. Man, you should see them, what they can do, how they can figure things out. So their minds can't be in error. Excuse me. The genius, where they're a genius, is awesome. But the genius who accepts the mind's interpretations for facts is just as dumb as anybody else when it comes to what they've not resolved in their minds. And they'll traumatize and they'll destroy their own bodies and the people around them, even though on the next project they're an absolute genius. Being a genius doesn't mean you've resolved any of the dynamics underlying the trauma in your life. And when you realize that and you apply the tool of forgiveness, then you get to remove those trauma-based interpretations and you get to apply your genius to more and more places in your life. But if every time something comes up in you that you think requires your interpretation, this requires my defense, this requires me to protect myself, then back into blame. And we get stuck in that, why are they doing this to me again? Unwilling to be responsible, we're stuck in the feelings generated by the reality the mind's showing us and perceptions from the past that keep us stuck. If I need to defend my reality and make it true about others, Rather than admit it's mine, the unresolved conflicts of the past are still running my life. So if you find yourself going into pain and upset where love is not present, that's the opportunity to apply the tool of forgiveness. You know, the gentleman did that worksheet yesterday. If you remember, the descriptors at the beginning were rage and yell and abandon and dread, fear. And by questioning those things, and you know, just think about it. Has anybody ever accused you of saying something you absolutely never said or doing something you absolutely never did? Of course, everybody, when I ask that question in the audience, laughs about it and raises their hand. Yes, we've all had that happen. Notice the state that the person who accused you of doing something that you never did, notice the state they were in. It's always some form of hostility or fear. Now, the average person sees that about everybody else, but when their mind's in hostility or fear, they don't believe that they're in error. They believe the constructs of their minds. And that means that the past is still running them. Many, if not all of our wounds, and therefore our pain, come from genetically inherited traumas. Multi-generational assaults reinforced through the unconscious actions generation after generation after generations, stored and repeated ad nauseum. Each pain perceptual construct of the mind appears to be different, but all of them are based on that hidden dissociated trauma that, when activated, obscures the subtle, permanently available experience of ourselves as love. And what forgiveness does is it resolves those pain-based energetic dynamics. So why is this happening to me again? Or why are they doing this to me again? And you'll notice that whatever your why is this happening to you again that you were doing at 10 or at 12 or 15 or 18 or 20 or 30 or 40 or 50, each time you were sure it was that other person. And just like today, you're sure it's that other person, and it's your mind lying to you. Because when the mind is generating constructs out of any form of hostility or fear, it's utilizing corrupt data to build those constructs. So what we're looking to do with forgiveness and the signal that the mind's using corrupt data is that there's some form of hostility or fear involved. You really don't need to look beyond the construct of your mind. You don't need to try to figure out who did what or who's right or who's wrong or what happened. All you have to know is there's hostility or fear at the root of my perceptual construct at this moment, and therefore my mind is using corrupt data and lying to me. And I want to be restored to the truth of who I am. And what forgiveness does is removes what's not you. So the blocks to the awareness of ourselves as love are never imposed from the outside. They're internal and removable. All healing and the return to love is a strictly inside job. When you realize that every construct of your mind is autobiographical, it tells you first and foremost what's going on inside of you. And until those generational traumas are removed and healed, we're easily tricked into believing the false pictures and perceptions generated by our minds. Again, check out that video by Anil Seth. It's a TED Talk, ANILSETH. And as long as we believe something outside of us is cause, rather than just a trigger of what's moving within, we literally inhabit a world of lies. Don't come from the pictures our mind generates. They come from the underlying internally generating energies. And that's always self-imposed. Blamers who insist that others are the problem in their lives would really do well to understand denial. The act of thinking or speaking as though something outside of us is the cause of what's moving on the inside. Because what happens is denial results in instant dissociation, the hiding of truth, which blocks the awareness of one's own internal dynamics, and that results in an unnatural condition called an unconscious mind. Blame, I would offer, is the most serious of character defects because it leaves one living in an hallucination that contains no truth. Blame is the father of liars. So that unconscious dynamic, when it's hidden, is unreachable and unchangeable. Carl Jung talks about this unconscious, the source of seemingly unavoidable repeating painful experiences. And he explains that we need to deal with those old familial habits and be restored to truth. He says it very simply. Everything that appears to irritate us about others can lead to understanding of oneself. Whatever is rejected from the self appears through blame in the world, called perception, as an event. We meet ourselves and our projections on others time and again in 1,000 disguises on the path of life, he says. Until the unconscious becomes conscious, it will direct our lives, and we will call it fate. So ultimately, to live a true human life, we must put an end to the multi-generational fantasy of victimhood through blame that many mistakenly swear is true. The truth is, we're not victims, we're creators. And when one's in that victim mode, the words that echo in their minds and out of their mouths are things like, you made me mad, sad, afraid, hurt. You're the reason this is moving in me. Well, somebody else may be the reason something's moving in you. Somebody else resonated, but they're not the reason that it's in you in the first place. So someone can come along and resonate what we haven't dealt with. But that someone else isn't the cause of what it is we haven't dealt with. And they give us a gift of showing us what we need to look at. And they're the things that are most urgent to look at. Because when you recognize that your physiology is an energy system, if we listen to Einstein where he says, on such things as matter, we've been all wrong. What we have heretofore called matter is energy, energy whose vibrations have been so lowered as to be perceptible to the senses. There is no matter. You don't have a material body, you have an energetic body, and relative to that energetic body, there are basically two qualities of energy. There's that which builds it up and that which tears it down. And hostility and fear tell you that you're tearing yourself down. Of course, then the question becomes, how do we make the unconscious conscious? The tools for reliably opening what in the ancient teachings was called the veil of the temple being this body, the veil of the temple is not a purple curtain in the church. It's a barrier beneath which we keep our pain hidden. And it's by opening that veil, that barrier, that we can remove the assault energy. And the tools for doing that have been around for over 2,000 years now. Literally, what forgiveness does is it opens a barrier between the subconscious and the unconscious mind. Process of forgiveness uncovers and removes what we've hidden. And of course, it's been hidden through denial. And it's hidden in the one place, it's guaranteed you're always going to get to deal with it, it's within. So when the forgiveness tool originally appeared, it was, here's how you get into your own unconscious and clean it out. The Greeks came along and misinterpreted it and said, no, this is how you let somebody else off the hook because that's moving in you. And literally with that errant directive, the simple technology of removal of forgiveness was lost. interpretation, we're convinced we need to be forgiven. You see people driving around bumper stickers on their car, I've been forgiven. No, you haven't. You're never going to be forgiven, because forgiveness isn't about how you're going to be let off the hook by God or your friend or your enemy or anybody else. The language is about, I need to forgive, remove from my mind and from my genes what never belonged. And that takes responsibility. To be able to remove it, you have to be responsible for it. If you really believe that it's somebody else's, you can never get rid of it, because, of course, it's theirs. So letting somebody else outside of us off the hook for what's going on inside of us will never rid us of our experience of internally generated hurt, upset, or pain. Outer directed acts don't bring correction to internally generated dynamics. And if you want that visceral opening that facilitates the flow of light and love into every instant of your life and every hurt dynamic within your memory, forgiveness is how to do it. Forgiveness collapses perception and leaves a clean and open space within your mind where love is present and the unconscious dynamic is allowed to come forward as it is. And in that instant, there's the removal of that pain energy. There's the transmutation of it. So when we start to interpret pain or turmoil as an invitation to end denial, to learn and to apply forgiveness, then everything changes. Perception, the world we think we see with our eyes, is an holographic projection of the mind. There's no life in it, and we see nothing with our eyes, we see with our brains. So elevating the quality of our perceptual constructs becomes one of the objects of the work. The experience of the presence of love in one's physiology indicates the mind's on track. And any form of fear or hostility is an indicator the mind is using corrupt data to build its projections rather than reflect accurate information about the actuality that we're living in. When we take unconscious content and make pictures of others of it, that's called projection. So the act of building realities out of internal content and pretending that the hologram presented by our mind, that image is actually out there, is projection. Each hologram of the mind is nothing more than a construct of the mind, and there's no life in it. So the purpose of this whole body of work is to offer a set of brain cells through which to see life truly, to move out of interpretation into fact, and to recognize when something's distorting the constructs of our minds and bring correction to those distortions. It's a simple tool. However, it's not an easy tool, mainly because, my take, one of the main reasons is because we've all been taught for so long that forgiveness is about how I'm going to let you off the hook. Or I'm going to let myself off the hook. I talked to someone the other day and explained the whole idea that forgiveness is about going inside and changing the content of your mind. And the guy says, yeah, well, I've already forgiven myself. It's not about forgiving yourself. It's not about forgiving anybody else. It's about giving up the blame game, taking ownership, taking responsibility, and removing from your mind what never belonged. And what never belonged in human physiology is any form of hostility, fear, rage, guilt, grief, drama or trauma. And you'll notice that those patterns, which are often and usually generational, when your power person did them to you, you had all kinds of negative descriptors for what they did. But when you do it to somebody else, your descriptors are positive. It's protecting you. It's good for you. Pull out and play out a power person dynamic on someone else. It's just as destructive to them as it was when your power person did it to you. So in a nutshell, that's the work of forgiveness. As Jeannie said, we've refined the worksheet, and I'm not 100% sure at this moment, because this new worksheet is a new project that we've just completed, come the main worksheet that we'll use in the future teaching of Why Is This Happening to Me Again. So pick up a copy of it. Jeannie's got it in the notes today, and it's available under worksheets on the website. It's the worksheet that we did the last 2 days with the gentleman that called in with Jack. And we're here to support you understanding it, integrating it, using it, and shifting your physiology, shifting your life. And feeling blessed we have the opportunity to do that. So, Miss Jeannie, do we have anybody in the phone queue with a hand up? Anything happening in the chat room?
No, on both occasions. However, I came into Dr. Tim's call a little bit late, but I think that what you were just going over might also help clarify for Dusty. He was asking questions, so I'm going to turn his microphone back on here in just a second. I've also, in the notes for today, that Anil Seth video that you were talking about is now on our YouTube channel, so I put the link in there for that so they can go directly to it. And then also what I thought of as you were describing how to make the unconscious conscious is the PowerPoint, which is also on our YouTube channel, goes through and talks about the unconscious, the subconscious, and the conscious. And so that is a short video that would also help explain that. And then I put in the link for the filters of the mind. But one of the things that, and Dusty, I'll turn your mic on and then let you clarify, but if I heard what you were asking Dr. Tim right was about opposites and life experiences, and Dr. Tim used the example of some people who have had a difficult life, yet they can be like helpful and kind or whatever, and yet the opposite is also true, that some people who have had a miserable life spread their misery. So it's sort of like what you were just talking about, depending on their content, how their perception and how they're going to see things and how they're going to respond. Correct?
Right.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Am I on?
Turn your mic on. If it was
You're
more
on,
than what
sir.
I
Good
just
to hear your
said,
voice.
please clarify.
Oh, thank you very much. Yes, and I guess my initial question to him was that it seems, and of course this is just a general perception, it's not always true, but that a lot of people I know that have had really tough trauma early on that worked through it seem to have I don't know, more depth or more empathy than, of course, those that just stay in the same darkness and pass it on. And I just wondered if you see that as well, if you understand kind of what I'm saying a little bit and can speak to any of that, that's fine. But yes, that was right, Jeannie. Thank you.
Yeah, my take, Dusty, and it's good to hear from you, is that when we work through and have the insight, when we're able to comprehend the why and what of another's destructive behavior, that comes from one of the aspects of being, the main one being love, but the other one's compassion. And that compassion opens up, that I can see and understand, and I don't have to be in that, blame game with them. I can understand where it came from. Doesn't mean I don't hold them accountable for it, but I don't have to be in some form of rage or blame in order to own and to hold that space of compassion. And where that space of compassion is, there's also love. And when love is there, then healing happens for everybody involved. That line in the worksheet, when I choose love, it wakes up the love in everyone.
Right.
So I'm with you on that one. Yeah, I'm in full agreement on that.
Yes. Would you say that you had well, of course, you had some physical difficulties when you were young. Were your parents, et cetera, were they pretty much supportive in some way, or, man, if I can be,
Yeah.
I don't mean to be overly personal, but
yeah, no. Actually, my parents were extremely supportive. That's one thing I have to hand. My dad was pretty heavy-handed, and there was some brutality there, but at the same time, there was never any question that and I look at what I put my parents through with the sickness that I had. It was just horrendous. When I think of that now, I have great compassion for them, and just
right.
imagining what it must have been like. But both of my parents, there was never any question that I was going to get the best care possible. So that was a fortunate blessing for me.
I'm glad for that. I walked into a stepdad who was a complete rageaholic and couldn't find anywhere to take it out on me because I was extra bad.
You were the object of attention.
Yeah, lucky me, huh? The good news is he never laid a hand on my sister.
Did you ever get to hear any of his abuse? What happened to him? Was that
no,
ever
but I thought
presented?
no. I mean, he wouldn't talk about it. He wouldn't even know what you had just said. But yeah, I can track it back, and I can see kind of where he came from. And his dad, honest to God, was the cold. He was the coldest man. I mean, I'd look at him, and he was just like, every time when I was a little kid, you know how you can perceive things in a particular way, all the way up, he was always just like an iceberg. Nothing, zero, no emanation of anything warm. And plus he had, I think, 7 brothers that were overachievers ahead of him. He was the youngest. So, he felt kicked, and he got in over his head, and I was the object of attention, as you put it. And,
can you imagine 7 older brothers? What kind of brutality he probably had to take as a kid?
Yeah, and I know just a little bit. I mean, the one brother that was closest to his age was the one that was tasked with keeping a hold of him when he, as the youngest, and he would play tricks on him all the time. I mean, he wasn't a mean brother, but he was, should we say, had a little bit of the trickster in him there. And my stepdad did not understand that at all. It just looked like, I don't know, it just made him feel less than. And I get
right.
it. And Michael, I remember the first time that this stepdad, who was, by the way, one of the 3 strongest men I've ever known in my life, and my little sister's in the hospital being born, and I'm playing with something, and I look up on the floor, like little trucks or something, and I look up, and here's this really tall guy towering over me. I don't even know the guy. I mean, I was introduced to him once, and my mom was like that, and I could see his arms moving around, and I could hear that there were sounds, but I couldn't really understand what he said. I couldn't even perceive it. It was so far outside of my paradigm, and such as it was. I looked up at him, and all I went, "Oh, this guy wants to hurt me." And I went, "Huh? How about that?" I didn't even. this guy wants to hurt me, and then he started, and it was very sadistic. It was never sexual, but it was brutal and it was sadistic. And I can only tell you that I feel so blessed because for whatever reasons, I don't seem to have hate born in me. You know what I mean? And I looked at this guy, and it's big and dark and scary, and I mean painful as it was being around him and dread for years and years. I knew right off the bat, as I was looking up at this guy that wants to hurt me, I knew that he was just pathetic. That was the word that came to my little mind. This guy's pathetic. And I couldn't hate him for being pathetic. And I just never did. And that's why I'm still alive, Michael. I know I've been dead by now.
I got it.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I hear you. Well, I think back to, the early days in Atlanta, going back 40 years ago, and, when I think of you, there was always that sweet spirit around you, that sweet energy around you. And, and I didn't know any of this back then, but I think about it now, and it's pretty amazing that you carried yourself the way you did. That's pretty amazing.
I appreciate that. Well, I appreciate that because I've heard different people's takes on me back in the day, and I'm always a little surprised because I was just charging ahead, you know what I mean? But even, do you remember Cheryl Coffey, my girlfriend at the time back then?
I do.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, in the late 90s, a little voice came in my head, and just, honest to God, just like this, and it's not the only time it's happened, but it went, call Cheryl, and I thought, I haven't even seen her in 40 years, or whatever it's been, 30 years there, and I didn't even know where to start, and then I remember her mother's last name, and you want to talk about kismet, I just called the only possible number that it could have been, and her mother's deaf. She never answers the phone. It just so happens Cheryl was visiting that day, walked by the phone when it rang and picked it up. And she had cancer, cervical cancer, and she was in pretty big denial about it, but I wound up going to Atlanta and trying to help her. She was in hospice, trying to help her by the time I got there, and trying to do whatever I could to be a loving, spiritual, so to speak, support for her. And she said something to me a little bit like what you said, and it knocked me over. I didn't expect it. She said, "Thank you. You were always so nice to me." And I went, "Huh? I was? I wasn't trying to be nice. You know what I mean? I was just, I don't know. I can look back now and see where I could have been a whole lot nicer. A lot more of her. But, nonetheless, that was her take. And I have to say, there's very little in my life that I, do over, that kind of thing. And
right.
But in the last few days, her energy or whatever has come up in me as nostalgia, to the point where I was listening to some music that we used to listen to, and I couldn't take it. I was starting to lose it here last night or but anyway, yeah.
Time to breathe.
So I did that thing at the hospice, and oh my goodness, I go down to the beach and play some other stuff on my horn often, and it's a two-part thing. It's well, for me, it's more of a benediction or just a prayer, but it's for the fallen and for valor in all walks of life. And I guess I wanted to just leave with that point, was that boy, valor comes in a lot of forms, does it not?
For sure.
Yeah, I mean, I sat in a room for it was almost 2 years with, I think there was typically 9 women and me, and they were all incest survivors, as they were called, and although some of them were not surviving. And it was, oh God, I don't even know where I'm going with this. I thought I did. I just got myself sidetracked. I found something.
Sounds like some powerful healing space is created.
It was, and it was, I just felt so honored to be invited into this group. I was the only guy. And I didn't have sexual issues, but I had big issues. And I was willing to work on them. And everybody got to, and I know you can relate. You probably do this, facilitated yourself, but, you know, we had a woman named Jean Jensen who was a facilitator, and she would just keep everything on track. And everybody got to go around the circle, and they got to unload. I mean, wail if they had to, and everybody just held the space, should we say, sacred or for them, and including me. And I am so grateful for opportunities like that. And but I'm still alive. I'm amazed. I'm amazed. You know.
Joining you in appreciation.
Yeah, man. And anyways, I don't know where I'm going with all that particularly, but yeah, it's just appreciate what you're doing there. And I wanted to say one thing about Jeannie. I'm just gobsmacked when we started programming. You go, oh yeah, I did this, that, and the other, and you did all this dancing around on the internet, and you changed this and you changed that, and you got this up and down around. And I go, wow. I don't even like checking my emails.
Thank you.
She's amazing at it.
And I agree with your line about her about being a genius, and that where I'm ultimately going with this is that I believe I hear an enthusiasm in your voice, Jeannie, a passion for this. And
it's actually more like, hey, I got it done. Because I doubt myself a lot of times when I'm starting one of these projects.
Oh yeah,
celebration.
Yeah, I know that. But darn, it's nice. It's nice to be able to pull off something like that. I feel the same way a little bit about music. You know, it might be something might be really hard at the beginning, but if I plug at it long enough, I'll eventually get it. And so I appreciate that, and both of you. And I don't really have much more to say. Maybe there's somebody else out there, but it's just nice to hear your voice.
Awesome. Appreciate the input. Appreciate the thoughts. One of the things you resonate for me, Dusty, is back. This is probably 25 years ago at Heartland. We were doing an intensive, and there was a man in the intensive who acknowledged that he had been sexually abusive with women. And there were 3 women who had been sexually abused. And he was really courageous in owning what he had done. And they made the request of him. Yeah, that was big. But they made the request of him, would he be willing to be the space, quite literally, that they unloaded on?
Oh, wow.
And he agreed and did that, and it was one of the most powerful, one of the most profound sessions I have ever seen. And the 4 of them ended up in tears and hugging, and just the end result for everybody, for him having had the space to confess, which he did, and for these 3 women to have the space to just unleash and unload, and he just breathed and held the space and was there to, brings up some emotion for me, to watch the appreciation at the completion point of that process of everybody that was in there, and was just monumental.
Oh, that's beautiful. And what strikes me about that is the fact that he got clear enough and, I don't know, removed whatever he had to from himself enough that the ladies evidently could perceive this, or they wouldn't have bared their souls with him.
Yeah, he created a super powerful safe space just by owning his mistakes and what he had done, and his remorse for it.
Yeah,
was just monumental.
Yeah. And in my experience, I don't know any kind of a trauma that I have seen manifest in people. You know, I mean, at least as a younger one, as girls that were molested. After spending some time, I mean, so what you're saying is extra powerful to me. I always thought that if you know, a real molestation of a girl or a boy or whatever, it's like second-degree murder is what how it hit me after.
It's like soul murder.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so kudos to this guy and to those gals.
Well, you know, every space that opens for healing, it opens a little wider for everybody who's carrying that issue. So, you know, there's a great thought in the Course in Miracles that says, millions yet unborn will benefit from the work you do. And so to me, that's one of the great reasons for continuing to move forward and keeping moving through the layers to open that space for those who otherwise would never do it on their own.
Oh, that's beautiful. I've never, that's a kind of a little bit of a spin that I hadn't quite looked at quite that way, and I appreciate it. Yeah, I'm going to take that one with me forward.
Yeah, I think each one of us is willing to do a piece of work. It's like we open the energy window for everyone else who hasn't handled that. You know, imagine we got a glass sliding door and it won't open. If somebody comes along and opens that door, it's easier for everybody to open the door. And I think that's what happens when we face any issue, whether it's a parental abuse issue or a bankruptcy issue, a death issue, whatever it is, that we open that space, that energy window for the active presence of love and light to come into that space for everyone.
Gotcha. Thank you for that. And I'm going to need to sign off. I need to get somewhere.
All right, my friend.
But
have a blessed one.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Bye-bye, you guys.
All right. Take care. Bye-bye. So awesome, the people we get to play with and the work that we get entrusted with. It's pretty amazing. Pretty amazing. So we've got about 10 minutes left. If you're out there in listener land, if you're on one of those stations where we can't see you, call-in number is 563-999-3581. If you call that number, you're listening to the show directly, and if you push 1, we'll be having a conversation. So let's have a conversation. What has resonated for you so far with what we've been speaking of? And how can we support you? What's on your mind? 563-999-3581. Push 1. Let's talk.
We have 9 minutes.
Any other thoughts for you, Jeannie?
No. Not right off. I thought of the little story that you tell about the person going into town and asking the man sitting on the porch what the people are like in that town. And the guy on the porch says, well, how were the people in the previous town? And he says, oh, they were wonderful and they were nice and they were kind. And he says, well, that's how the people in this town are, or how you'll find the people in this town. And then he says, then another guy comes through and asks the same question, and he says, well, how were the people in the last town you were in? And he says, oh, they were awful, they were hateful, they were mean, they were, not very nice. And he goes, well, that's how you're going to find the people here too. So it's always how you see, that you don't see with your eyes, as Aria says, you see with your brain.
Exactly.
And she uses that a lot lately in anything. She says, well, like yesterday, I was taking her home, and she mentioned a place. Well, it was We Rock at the Spectrum, and she said, you know what that is? And I'm like, no, what is it? She's like, it's that place, that we went to play. And I'm like, how did you remember the name of it? And she says, my brain told me.
Pretty amazing. So if you're out there in listener land, do you have a thought for us, a question, an answer, something to share? A powerful worksheet that you've done, a question on the worksheet, a question on the codependence dynamic, on creating consciously, healing through relationships, communication. Did you hear what I think I said? Purpose, personal power, commitment. Questions on anything that we've done. Naturopathic keys to health. Well, I'm complete with my monologue at this aspect at this point, so if nobody else has a question for us today, then perhaps we'll call the show and say thank you for joining us and hold the space that everybody has the best year yet of your eternal life. It's an awesome gift to give the world. You can give it, the world needs it.